Silksong finally released at the beginning of this month for $20 and it broke Steam records. But there are some indie developers who are panicking and even melting down. Some have delayed their games into 2026, others have complained that the price is way too cheap. And there are even people who are saying Team Cherry has the responsibility to warn other game developers and not shadow drop the game within 2 weeks. Salam, my name is Mustafa and I am an indie game developer, but I'm not panicking over Silksong. Since the announcement of Silksong's release date, we've been seeing indie developers reacting as well as panicking to that news. So there is a tweet going around by a user that goes by Permaband. This tweet is a compilation of complaints towards Team Cherry, stating that it was Team Cherry's responsibility towards other indie devs. I looked at this compilation tweet, and the issue I have with this compilation is that all the users are just random people. None of them appear to be indie game devs. Although there have been indie devs who did push back their games, such as Necrosoft Games, who's working on Demonschool. This is an indie tactics RPG studio, and they delayed their game from September to November, and they admitted they couldn't fight Silksong's release date head on. Aeterna Game Studios, which is a small indie team, they postponed their game all the way until 2026 because of Silksong's release date. Some indie devs have been taking it very lighthearted though, such as Sunnyside Games, who's working on Little Witch in the Woods. They posted this image on their social media in regards to pushing back their game due to Silksong's release date. Same with Baby Steps, which got pushed back a couple weeks. They released a new trailer which has a giant statue of Hornet, the main character of Silksong. These reactions seem to be more strategic. Yes, it seems that some of them seem to be upset that they had to change their plans, but it doesn't seem to be as if they're complaining like the tweets that Permaband compiled together. So does Team Cherry have the responsibility to tell other indie devs that they're going to release their game? No, they don't. Team Cherry's responsibility is the success of their own game. Whether a game is indie or AAA, everybody focuses on what makes their game the most successful. There is not a single developer or publisher that strategically sets the launch of their game so that others can succeed. This idea that Team Cherry is so big that they have to help others out is ridiculous. They spent years working on this game, and of course the momentum has slowed down for the game's hype due to how long it's been in development. The discoverability and the algorithm for these digital stores is a mystery for the most part, but it appears that one factor that matters, at least for the Steam store, is momentum. And if a game has been available for wishlist for multiple years, then the momentum goes up and down at certain points. Shadow dropping the game within 2 weeks really gets people hyped up, and it pushes up that momentum, and it will help them with their discoverability for their game. This complaint that Team Cherry has the responsibility for others is basically the socialist mindset that they've been trying to spread. We need equity so that everybody gets across the finish line. I think helping others out, whether it's setting up some sort of resources or giving others shout outs, is great. But when it comes to launching your own game, then you want to make sure you're going to get as successful as possible with your own game. There is no reason for Team Cherry to sabotage their own success just so others have a fighting chance. Again, though, it does appear that the developers who did shift their launch date weren't the ones who actually made these complaints, but these complaints are ridiculous from the get-go. We shouldn't even entertain these complaints. There are a number of complaints from indie developers about the price though. They're complaining that the $20 price point is too cheap, such as RJ Lake, who is the composer and the director of Unbeatable. He's saying that Silksong's price is setting up unrealistic expectations. Or Mike Rose, the founder of No More Robots, who stated that people have less disposable income at this point. A bargain like Silksong makes other indie games look less appealing. Or one of the co-founders of Devolver's Digital, who I'm not going to attempt to say his name, he said that indies already emphasize value, but Silksong pushes that conversation even further. Even though Silksong isn't a direct competitor with a lot of these games as far as genre and gameplay, a lot of these complaints come from the fact that Indie game buyers usually buy any type of indie game, and when someone is more picky with how they spend their money, they're going to spend their money towards the game that's going to give them the most value, which in this case is Silksong, due to the fact that it has a lot of content and it's a really good quality game, but it's at a low price point of $20. Chris Zukowski, who is very well known with indie game developers, he is a Steam marketing consultant for indie developers. He's a great resource to learn about marketing a game and selling a game on Steam. For years, he's been advocating for indie game developers to price their games higher. This is because there are so many more indie games that are trying to price their games lower just to make their game look more appealing. It's become a race to the bottom. All these games are less than $5. They're $3, $2, even $1 games. Some people even put up their games for free on Steam without any form of monetization. And this becomes a battle between indie developers trying to sell their game for super cheap and trying to outdo each other. And then they end up making no money because their game is so cheap. You have to keep in mind, when a game is sold on Steam, Valve keeps 30% of the cut. And on top of that, you have taxes. In addition to that, if the game is sold in other regions, the localized price might not be one-to-one with what it is in the United States. So in reality, the indie dev makes about 50% of what the game's price is. What Chris Zukowski has been advocating towards indie game developers is to look at a competing game and then price it 20 to 30% more than that game. And the reason why he advocates for this is because the majority of units sold for a game is not at full price. The majority of sales come from discounts during the Steam sale, such as the spring, summer, fall, and winter sales. And many gamers have a certain percentage that they won't pay above. For example, some gamers won't buy a game that isn't at least 50% off. And this is why Chris Zukowski has been advocating for indie game devs to price their games higher. Because when you're selling your game for $3 and then people won't pay for it unless it's 50% off, you're making sense. And Chris Zukowski has been saying that the only way to beat this race towards the bottom, this mindset of my game needs to be cheaper just to stand out, is by having all of us just bump up the price a little bit, because it's just simply not sustainable to try to make our games constantly cheaper just to make our games stand out in comparison to the higher quality games. In regards to Silksong, Chris Zukowski says, I still don't think Silksong's release will affect you either, even if you are releasing on Steam. My personal take is that some of these games are actually going to do better due to the fact that they pushed their release date. A lot of these games I mentioned earlier in this video are now starting to go more viral due to the fact that they had to push their release date and avoid Silksong. That's definitely going to give them a bump in wish lists. I do think that Team Cherry could have priced it a little bit more and still got away with it. Whether they went for a $25 price point or even a $30 price point, I don't think it would have negatively impacted the amount of sales numbers that they got. But it's up to them and their marketing team as to how they want to price the game. And I'm pretty sure that they had some consultants that they discussed with in regards to how they should price their game. So the price point is more likely a calculated choice rather than, hey, let's just go with this again. Personally, I don't think that having Silksong at $20 is going to affect the overall market. We've seen plenty of huge hits at low price points, such as Vampire Survivors at $5. Yeah, it was a cheaply made game, but it was also a huge hit that everybody was talking about. And then we have Balatro for $15, which did extremely well. And Terraria is the 8th best-selling game on Steam at 64 million sales, and the game's only $10. It theoretically has infinite replay value, but Terraria isn't ruining it for all other indie devs. We've seen in the past publishers try to lower the price to stand out and fail. For example, in the early 2000s, Majesco released a number of games at $20. They published Psychonauts, Raises Hell, Phantom Dust, and Advent Rising. Though Advent Rising was a buggy mess, but that's another story. The point being, at least 3 of those games were really good, but all those games flopped because people perceived them as budget bin games. At a $20 release point, it made them look cheap from the get-go. People questioned the quality of those games. I even recall talking to a cashier at a game store at the time, and I was telling her about how Phantom Dust was amazing, and she couldn't believe it because it was a $20 game. She was thinking it was going to be garbage. While none of those games I mentioned are on the same quality as Hollow Knight or Silksong, the point being, in many cases, a lower price point can make a gamer think that it is lower quality. And this is why indie devs shouldn't panic just because of one game. When we combine all the digital stores, the marketplaces are full of billions of people. Panicking about Silksong's low price point and blaming them for your failure is not going to do anybody any good. Only thing we could do is make the best games we can make and then try to have a good marketing strategy. Let me know in the comments below about what you think about game developers complaining about Silksong's release date. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you, take care, salam.